I'm Katie Seiler from the Castro Valley High School Olympian Media Empire, here with Governor Gavin Newsom at the state capitol in Sacramento. Thanks for seeing me, Governor Newsom.
It's good to be the media empire.
Oh, yeah.
Is that aspirational, or is it truly an empire you guys have put together?
I assure you.
That's good. Well done.
So first, I'd like to ask you, what are you most proud of accomplishing in your first year in office?
I wouldn't specifically point to an issue or a legislative accomplishment. I'd more just re-energizing a focus on the issues of income inequality, refocusing on the issues of homelessness and affordability in the state. I think more important than anything else is the flywheel effect of reinvigorating a debate around how we can be more competitive for the middle class and address the issue, a real crisis of affordability in California.
All right. How would you assess the state of our public schools?
Look, not where they need to be, but getting better. And that's objective. Since 2011, we've seen an 80% increase in per pupil funding in the state of California. I put back-to-back record budgets investing in our K through 14 education system. Also put significant supports to our higher education system, the UCs and CSUs. What has been missing in California is a commensurate investment in preschool. Head Start, early Head Start, 0 to 3, not just 0 to 5. Where we do poorly versus other competitive states is preparing our kids to enter into kindergarten. So we talk about an achievement gap in California, but the achievement gap really manifests the first day of kindergarten. And if you aren't prepared in kindergarten, chances are we're going to struggle to make sure we adequately address that gap as it manifests throughout your time in elementary, middle, high school, and beyond. So that's a big focus for us, and we are stubbornly making progress. I'm in the second year of a 3-year commitment to provide universal preschool for all eligible 4-year-olds. We are going to achieve that this time next year. Hopefully I've submitted that budget to fulfill that commitment. But we have a lot of work to focus on quality, get to 3-year-olds, do more on prenatal care, 0 to 3, the first 100 days of life that are so important, let alone the first 3 years of life that are determinative disproportionately in terms of your fate and future. And so that's my biggest educational reform focus, in addition to providing support for teachers and addressing the needs of special education and other areas where we're obviously in need of doing more, and we advanced an agenda on this, to do just that too.
Why is California's per student spending among the lowest in the nation, and what can we do about it? Yeah,
we're technically out of the bottom 10. When we get the new numbers, I anticipate that to be the case, but that's inadequate. I mean, we used to be first, we went to worst, now we're making progress. We've seen progress we've seen progress, stubborn progress, in reading scores for 8th graders. We've seen stubborn progress in addressing the needs of English as a second language learners. We've seen some stubborn progress as it relates to closing the gaps for Latino students. Where we are failing miserably is African American students, where the achievement gap is getting worse, not better, and doing very poorly in science. And so that's an area of real focus, again, in our budget, where we are really getting aggressive to support our underperforming schools and high poverty districts. We're providing incentives, stipends for teachers, up to $20,000 to teach in underserved communities in topics, subject matters like science, technology, engineering, math, special ed, that are also in desperate need of high quality teachers. We have residency programs for teachers, hundreds of millions of dollars in that space. Special education, hundreds of millions more. I built on a budget last year where we really want to reinvent the special education space. So again, per pupil investment is getting better, 80% more than what it was in 2011. Not even near where it needs to be. But I am not, I don't have a dystopian outlook about the nature of our K through 12 education system. I do have a deep, stubborn desire to address the achievement gap before it manifests. It's an opportunity gap, and as I said, we start behind in life. We don't just fall behind, and that's why it's so important when you talk about K through 12 education, you have a commensurate investment focus on those first 4 or 5 critical years of life.
Students support later school start times, but oppose later release times. With later start
Release, it sounds like prison. God bless.
With later start times coming, what do you think about shortening the school day so release times can remain consistent?
Longer school days. Get rid of summers. Do you toil the fields in the summer?
No.
Do you go back to the farm?
No.
You don't. Okay. But the point being, we have an old industrial mindset of education where it starts at a certain hour, 9 to 5 careers. You have one job and you get a nice watch and then maybe a 2-week vacation and retire in Boca Raton. I mean, it's sort of a nonsensical reality that we're living in that's based upon past practices, not new realities of the world we're living in. So I was very proud. Governor Brown vetoed the late start time. I supported it because I believe in science, and I think the science overwhelmingly bears out, particularly for people your age and a little bit older, that you stubbornly have a hard time falling asleep and you have a difficult time waking up, and sometimes you're still asleep in the second, third period. And so you want real education reform. In some ways, it may not be that much more complex than starting school a little bit later with more prepared teachers that are focused on building relationships and really focus on the whole person. A more holistic approach to dealing with some of the issues a lot of our children bring into the classroom. I think we get too caught up in the fancy, new, shiny object of education reform or some technological solution when it's really not that complex at the end of the day. And so for me, later school start was part of it. But I also believe that community schools need to be part of our agenda. And what I mean by community schools goes to your question. I believe that we need to meet people where they are, and to the extent some people have extended learning, extended school days. I don't think that's necessarily a terrible thing, but I'm not arguing for a South Korea model either, so don't worry.
Okay.
Look that one up.
How do you plan on ending the vaping epidemic?
Well, we've been very aggressive. I mean, doing a vaping tax. I announced that in my budget a couple weeks ago to tax vaping and cartridges commensurate with how we tax tobacco. We currently don't have that. I think we should absolutely eliminate all the flavored vaping. I think the Trump administration, to their credit, went part of the way. We want to go the entire distance. And then we got to be more aggressive on enforcement. It's a huge issue. It scares the bejesus out of me as a parent with 4 kids in the stories I'm hearing. And it's unacceptable that we have allowed this to manifest on our watch. We own this. We should have seen this coming. I'm very proud to be from San Francisco, where I was very involved as a county supervisor and a mayor on anti-smoking strategies, getting rid of tobacco advertising in our city, big billboards, which I was involved in. I'm a business owner, restaurants and bars. I was very proud of the work San Francisco did even before I became an elected official, ending smoking in restaurants and bars. You may not, thank God you haven't lived in a world where you couldn't even go to get breakfast without people smoking in your face. So we've made a lot of progress in this country, but we have to make more, and California has a responsibility to lead the nation. California and New York, a few other states have really led, and California will continue to, but this is a top agenda this year.
How do you think the state should address the housing crisis?
In a multifaceted way. First, you got to own the responsibility of solving the issue. You got to recognize that we're producing roughly a quarter of the housing units that we need to in order to address the crisis. This is not more complicated than your Econ 101 class. Supply, demand. More demand, less supply, creates scarcity, which increase costs. We are not producing enough housing units. It's not that complex. The state is not going to socialize that responsibility. I mean, we're not going to write hundreds of billions of dollars in checks to build housing, but we have a responsibility to create the conditions where we can create the private sector investment, which means more certainty, time value of money, deal with the regulatory hurdles and challenges, deal with access to financing. So last year I put up $1.75 billion in the budget for new tax credit, revolving loan funds, infill grants, and pre-development support for cities and counties up and down the state. We're starting to sue cities. It's not a good thing as mayor, governor, trust me, former mayor, to sue mayors, but you have to hold them accountable to meeting their housing element requirements and responsibilities, their general plan. Bore you with all this except to say it's about accountability, transparency, owning a problem in a crisis, recognizing it took 20, 30 years of neglect to get here. We're not going to turn the corner tomorrow, but having audacious goals, 3.5 million housing units in the next decade or so. We said 2025, but it was a stretch goal to orient people's focus on the issue and start holding municipalities accountable, build regional frameworks to address the issue, and then address some of the regulatory strategies this year, hopefully, including a version of SB 50. We'll see what happens in the next few weeks. A lot of moving parts there to help us move the production side. Same time, production's one part of a three-legged stool, 3 Ps. I'm looking at the tripod. Production right there, prevention right there, and that's why we passed. They said it couldn't be done. Proud of this. I love when people say you can't do something. I'm sort of a Roger Bannister theorist. You can look up Roger Bannister, broke the 4-minute mile. You don't know what you don't know. So we didn't know that you couldn't get a rent package upstairs, and we got one. So we have an anti-rent gouging bill that we put into place, and then just cause eviction. So we keep people in their housing, and then we address the most extreme circumstances where people are taking advantage of renters and they end up out on the streets and sidewalks, quite literally. So prevention, production, and finally preservation. You got to preserve your existing housing stock. As a former mayor, there's a lot of gentrification. You lose your low-income housing stock. It's very difficult to get it back, and we have to be more aggressive in that respect as well.
Why do you think the state's gas prices are higher than other states?
For many different reasons. We just passed a gas tax a year or so ago, but $5.4 billion of that is being invested in our roads and a lot of transit in this state. $3.5 billion on the roads, $1.9 billion in transit. The voters approved that measure, and I thought it was the right thing to do. We've traditionally always funded our roads by gas taxes. Most other big states have passed gas taxes in the last number of years, but as a consequence of that, and as a consequence of the nature of how our refineries are operating in the state, a lack of competition, and with respect, the usurious nature, and this is controversial, forgive me, don't want to get in trouble, except to say the usurious nature of how we market and brand high quality gasoline and how that comes with a high price. And as customers, we're fooled into believing that's necessary. We in California pay more. And I have asked that not only I had a commission that I put together on this topic. I have now asked the Department of Justice, our Attorney General, to look into some of those practices, those gouging practices that I believe are real in the state of California that lead to these higher gas prices, and we're looking forward to learning more in the next few months on that.
How has the Trump administration impacted California, and how have you reacted to it?
He's an invasive species. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I know I've offended 52 people that are watching this that are big mega perp people. Forgive me. I'm not a fan of someone that attacks our diverse communities, tries to deny women equal access, equal pay. I'm not a big supporter of someone that wants to roll back environmental protections, who wants to dilute our ability to regulate gun safety. I just not. He threatens Californians individually, threatens us as a class, threatens us as a state. We're involved in 60 plus lawsuits against this guy. I don't think he's a good human being. Forgive me. You may like his politics. I don't. I'm going to have the backs of the people of the state. I represent the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. We're a universal state, a state of refuge. He wants to deny refugees. He's not a proponent of comprehensive immigration reform where you can address the issue. He just took public charge yesterday, denying mixed status families the ability to access critical support like medical care and food stamps, and putting them at risk. He's threatening families to deport them. He's caging kids. I can go on. I get offended. I know I'm supposed to, and especially for you and your age group, forgive me, rise above it. I don't. And I've worked with him on emergency preparedness. He's threatened our emergency dollars. He's a bully. I don't like bullies. I don't like Democratic bullies. I don't like Republican bullies. I don't like bullies that are tall. I don't like bullies that are short. I don't like bullies that are men. I don't like bullies that are women. I don't like bullies that come from rural parts of the state or urban parts. I don't like bullies. I was bullied as a kid. I don't like bullies. I know who they are. They're weak. They're scared. He's weak and scared. And I think he's a terrible example to young people. And I say that as a guy married into a big Republican family. There's deep respect for the Republican Party. I really do. And I'm working hard to represent all Californians. I've made a big part and push in my agenda to focus on rural California. Spent probably more time than any governor in recent memory in red parts of the state to make the point that you matter and I care. I'm not going to talk down to those folks. I'm going to talk past to those folks. I don't care if they supported me. I don't even care if they have a recall campaign against me, and there are two. I have an obligation to represent those folks. Trump represents something completely deviant from the norm, and I don't like it, and I'm not going to embrace it, and I think it's deeply impacting this country and the world, and in California in particular, where we're going through a very difficult time, but we will get out of this stronger than ever. Forgive my long-windedness. You asked the question, I answered.
Yes, sir. Do you have any predictions about the 2020 election?
Yes, lots of predictions. I predict that we won't know who wins until Election Day. That's my prediction.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
I think that's a fair prediction.
I don't know. That said, I'm nervous about it. We all should be nervous about it. One prediction I have is Donald Trump, this is my personal prediction, people can disagree, he'll lose by more popular votes than he did last time. But I cannot predict the outcome of the electoral. That's the nature of our system. And good and bad, we can debate that. And there's merit and demerits to that. But that I feel confident in predicting. Beyond that, I have no idea.
What do you think about running for president in 2024 or 2028?
I don't think anything of those things. No, no. No and no. No, no. Is that a no? It's a no. Capital N-O. No, comma, O, N-O.
So that's a no?
No, no, no. 4 cameras, 4 no's.
Okay. And now for our toughest question,
Yes.
What do you know about our hometown of Castro Valley?
Well, I know Castro Valley well because I'm Californian. I'm from the region, and I'm 5th generation Californian. So I've got sort of generational construct. That said, I haven't been recently. I feel kind of guilty, and I've been all over the place. Last week, I was up in Placer County, Nevada County. Went up to Grass Valley, went down to Riverside, went down to L.A., in South L.A., and then we went up to Fresno, and I was in Oakland, San Francisco, back here. Skipped you guys. I feel guilty now, but that's why we're here together.
Yep. Thank you very much for your time. Can we see you again next year?
Let's do it. I made the commitment once, got to follow through on the commitment the second time.
That's very nice to hear. This has been Katie Seiler with Governor Newsom at the state capitol. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for having me.